Ladies and gentlemen, it's Friday. Looks like we made it. So stoked that everybody's here. Weekend's coming up. I got a great show for you today. I'm here with the one and only Kevin Holt. Kevin Holt is a 2 times author, a world traveler. He's worked in multiple countries. He is always on investigating something new. He's one of the most fascinating people I've ever met. He's been on the show multiple times, and he is on a new adventure today that is testing what is possible in life. He's on this incredible adventure, 1,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It's like a science fiction novel when I talk to this guy. So I hope everybody's super excited. I'm going to bring him on. Kevin, how's it going, my friend? How you doing today?
Unmute. Yeah, as always, George, thank you for that incredibly enthusiastic and loquacious introduction and background. I appreciate it. I'm doing good. I'm sorry for the lighting, for whoever's watching. I'm in this little cabin in Norway with bad lighting and not great internet. So hopefully the internet stays with us through this podcast. But please stick around. If it cuts, I will find a solution. And I'm sporting my Viking hair growth because basically the bathroom here is terrible and it's not convenient to shave. And then I figured I might as well go full Nordic. So I've never had a beard this long before, and I'm just gonna grow it out and see how it looks. What's your opinion? You like it? I don't like it.
I think it's good.
Okay.
I think you got to go Nordic, man. I don't
know. See these white patches? I look my age when I got the beard. You see all the white down here.
Yeah, distinguished, my friend. I think it looks distinguishing. You know, for people who were wondering, like, what is this guy doing in like a low lighting cabin with no internet out in the middle of Norway? Well, I think you're doing what Vikings do, man. What maybe you can tell people about why you're out there and some background about what you're doing, man. It's fascinating.
All right. I mean, some people watching I've been on your show probably 3 or 4 times. So some of you watching might know a little bit about what I've been doing lately. Essentially, I'm going to be 41 next month. And I had a not long career, let's say a 7-8 year career in the corporate white collar consulting world. And at some point 2 years ago, it just came to an end. I don't want to say it like ended, but I got a point in my career where I felt like I had to fight somewhat to keep it going. And at the end of the day, I just didn't want it that bad and I let it go. And then I didn't know what to do. And so I spent a couple of years, I moved to Bali and I just did nothing at all for about 2 years and try to think about what I should do next sometimes. And then I would get an idea, oh, maybe I should go into this company or that country or that consulting firm. But it just, nothing really took and it didn't really appeal to me because I knew at the end of the day, it would be sort of more or less the same things I'd always done, which is, work in an office. Oh, shit, let me see if I. And we're back. Okay. So I got to the point where I didn't know what to do next. And then I ended up talking to a guy who was around my age, and he somehow had a similar backstory. He was working in Wall Street, working in front of a computer all day, 10, 12 hours a day. And he came into the idea of commercial diving. And to be honest, I'd never heard of commercial diving before. I'd heard of diving, obviously. I'd done PADI courses. I'd done, let's say, 1 PADI course. And, maybe I've maybe dived 3 or 4 times my whole life, but I really enjoyed it. And this guy said, oh, there's this thing called commercial diving where you can actually work under the water. Like these guys do all kinds of stuff under the water. They fix pipes, they salvage boats, they rescue, they work in dams and things like that, hydroelectric plants, nuclear power plants, anywhere there's water and things that can break or need to be built, you probably have a commercial diver down there fixing it. And it just fascinated me. And I think the idea that I'd never really worked physically before, I'd always used my brain to make money. And the idea of doing something completely different and learning a real trade was very appealing to me. And the way he also portrayed it was that he wouldn't, it's not like a 9 to 5 where you're working Monday to Friday, 48 weeks a year. You would work maybe 2-3 weeks at a time. Then you'd have off for a month. Then you might have another job for 2 weeks or 4 weeks. Then you might be off for another month. So it's kind of like just start and go sort of project-based work. And he traveled all over the place. He would have a job in Africa. He had another job in Malaysia. He had a job in Norway or whatever. And he would just go around wherever diving was needed. And then he told me about this thing called saturation diving, which is basically the Earth equivalent of being an astronaut while on the Earth. And these guys, they work at pressures which you wouldn't even think would sustain life, but they actually will live in a pressurized chamber for weeks at a time at 10 times or 15 times normal atmosphere. And they live at that pressure, and they work underwater, and they sleep in that pressure. And they're down there for like 2-3 weeks in this little pressurized metallic chamber as if they're in a space shuttle. And it's a very disciplined environment. They've got to breathe special gases. They've got special equipment, and it's a cramped space. They're going down in this little diving bell that only fits 2 or 3 people. And if you're looking down in it and you're claustrophobic, you probably have a panic attack just looking at them get in there. And so he was telling me all this stuff. And then I just thought, fuck it, I don't have a better idea, right? And then I sat with it for a while. I had this idea, and I got the idea to do it. And I kept saying, you know what, if something better happens, I'll do that. But until I get a better idea, I'm going to do this. And about 8 months or 10 months went by, and I didn't have any better idea. So here I am doing the course. And I'm about halfway through. So I can't really say what the work is like in the real world, but the course has been great. I've met all kinds of different people that I wouldn't normally meet. And I'm sort of like the fish out of water here, to use the expression, because a lot of the guys that I'm with were, they worked in construction, they're welders, a bunch of Eastern European guys, 2 guys from Latvia, a guy from Lithuania, a Russian guy. And a lot of them work in diving already, or their families have dive companies. So I'm probably, let's say, the least experienced, because I literally only been scuba diving about 4 times before I decided to jump into this, pretty hardcore technical diving course where just today I finished my last deep dive. I went down to 50 meters today. And it's a pretty, I wouldn't say it's rough, but it's not easy, because you only have about 15 minutes to go from surface all the way down to 50 and then pretty much all the way back up. And you have to depressurize in water for 25 minutes. So you're just in there in the water for 25 minutes, just waiting till you could come back to surface so you don't get the bends. But yeah, that's a bit of a why I'm here. And the school is in Norway. It's one of the best schools in the world, allegedly. And it's also one of the most affordable. So there you go. And I'm living about an hour. It's about an hour outside of Oslo. And I found this little cabin, and it's 15 minutes to the school. So it's a 3-month course. I've been here since early August. What do you think?
I love it, man.
I think it's
a incredible, not only idea, but an incredible profession to do. And I love the analogy of being an astronaut on Earth, because it is an incredibly unique environment, one of which most people will never see. And we don't think about all the activity that takes place below the water. We don't think about all the pipes, the internet cables, the boats, everything that happens underwater. It's such a alien environment that you would have to have somewhat of astronauts to be down there, man. Maybe you could run us through what it was like getting there what I think you have to learn all kinds of stuff before you probably even get in the water, right? Like you have to learn the physics about it. You have to learn what you're doing. I'm sure there's all kinds of technical aspects you got to learn before you get in the water. You have to go through the environment of what the diving tube would look like. Like just run us through like the course so far, man, what it was like from beginning to where you are now.
Yeah. So before you go in the water, you have to understand, or you have to learn a few basic things, such as just the physics of gas, how gas works at pressure. And once you get it, it's like kind of, I think one of the things I'm really enjoying of this course is I'm seeing the human body in the world in this new dimension that I didn't expect. Because you study physics in school, but when you're actually working with the stuff and the understanding of it has a life and death implication, it's much more interesting to see how it all works. And just like, for example, the idea of an airlock. I don't know if I fully understood how an airlock worked before, but it's actually really simple. You have two chambers with a door, and all you do is you take one chamber and you fill it up with more air so that the pressure increases, and then you can no longer open the door from the other side. And that's basically what they're doing under the water with these compartments. They're filling it up with air and they're staying at pressure. So one thing we had to learn is about physics, about how gases expand and contract as you go up and down, as you breathe different gases, what happens to the body. So we have to learn a whole thing about diving medicine. We've got to learn about all the ways you can get killed, and how basically everything is toxic. Everything, right? You can drink too much water and die. Similarly, you can die from oxygen. The air that we breathe is actually only 21% oxygen. And I think I knew that, but I didn't really know what the application was to my life. But yeah, the air we breathe is 79% nitrogen, 21% oxygen. If you breathe 100% oxygen for more than an hour or two, you would start having convulsions and go unconscious and die. So yeah, oxygen will kill you. If you breathe air and you go deeper than about 70 meters in the water, it's the oxygen that kills you because it becomes toxic and you have a convulsion and you lose consciousness and you'll die. Nitrogen, which normally does nothing at high pressures, may also kill you, right? The air you breathe, the 21% oxygen we breathe, we don't even use all of that. We breathe in, when we breathe in the air, it's 21% oxygen. When we exhale, it's 16% oxygen. So we're only using like 4.5% of the oxygen in the air. And the CO2 that we exhale is actually the trigger that tells us when to breathe. So when our body fills up with CO2, that's where the body's like, oh shit, we need more oxygen. So we take an inhaling breath. So there's all kinds of things around that too. Like if you get too much oxygen and not enough CO2, the body doesn't know when to breathe because there's not enough CO2 telling it to breathe. And on the flip side, you get too much CO2, then you also have another set of problems, right? Then you get a headache, your blood vessels will dilate, and your blood will absorb even more of that nitrogen, and that's going to make the nitrogen effect even worse. So like there's all these different things to think about at depth. So that's like, this is sort of the intro before you even dive. You have to understand how the poisoning works, how at pressure, what happens with these gases in the body, how to understand, oh, if I have difficulty breathing, if I'm short of breath, what's the issue? The issue is probably too much CO2. So then there's you can adjust your mask to like flush it out and then breathe easier. And then you go up a little bit and then try to calm your breathing down. What happens if I'm feeling too like happy or giddy or I'm losing focus? Well, you probably have nitrogen poisoning. So you got to go up, What happens if you start passing out? Well, that's oxygen poisoning. And so there's all these different things. So that's the first part, is learning all of that stuff, and how you have to learn diving tables, like at which meters of depth, how long can you stay down, and if you depending on how long you stay down, what do you have to do in terms of the decompression when you come back out of the water? So that's sort of the basic learning we had to do. And also, of course, the dangers, and there's fire risk, there's all kinds of other stuff to think about. And then, so that's 2 weeks or so of just theory and quizzes and tests and stuff. And then it's 13 weeks of practical diving. And we're diving every day from about 8 a.m. to 3 every day. And we're in groups of 8 or 9, and then we're just going through the steps. The first phase was just learning how to use the technology. And for anybody that's listening to this and has dived before, this isn't like anything probably you've done. It's nothing like I've done. It's not scuba, okay? There's no scuba vest. It's not tropical. Like, we're in cold water, and we're using what's called a dry suit instead of a wetsuit, which I'd never heard of either. So a dry suit's totally rubberized suit. It fills with air, and the air is what keeps you dry and warm, because the air creates insulation around your body. And you also use that air to adjust your buoyancy, to sink or lower in the water. And then you got fins, and then we've got this big old helmet. It's not like a scuba mask, it's a full-on helmet, like in the movie Men of Honor, if you've seen that, where they wear these things and the tube is coming out. So it's called surface supplied air. So we've got what's called an umbilical hose connected to the helmet. And then that has a video camera and communications on it. So when we're down there, we're talking to the surface, and they're seeing what we're doing. We're looking around, they've got a camera, and we're having this like communication with each other and the other diver. So we're doing, work under there. And at first we just practice emergency stuff. Like, what do you do when, your umbilical gas supply gets cut? What do you do? Well, we've got a scuba tank as a reserve. So we just practice that gas cut exercise. Oh, my gas is cut. Open the bailout or a scuba tank. So we did that for a while. And my first teacher was this former Turkish Navy guy. And I think he'd also studied with the U.S. Navy. I don't think he did SEALs program, but he did some kind of U.S. Navy diver hazing thing. So he had that background. It's kind of like roughneck, and they message you a lot. But he's in Norway, so he can't really, haze you like they would in the Navy, especially in Turkey. But he would like to mess with us sometimes, where he would just like cut your gas without telling you sometimes, and you just had to be ready for it, And so so we do that, and then practice communications failure. What happens if you can't communicate with the surface anymore? What do you do? What happens if your dive buddy goes unconscious? We had to practice rescuing each other. So that's just sort of the basics. And then now we're doing some other stuff, like the next station. It's in like stations. So you spend a week at one station, let's say, and it's the simulation of this saturation thing. I think I'm going to switch to the other. All right, hang on. I might have lost it for a sec.
There we go.
I think we're back.
Nice.
So that'll happen. It'll cut out, but it's short, and then it'll come back, and then suddenly there's a boom, and it'll cut out for like a second and come back. But yeah, so we're doing that kind of stuff where we're going down in the diving bell, and then we have another different special suit where this one pumps hot water through you. And then we're doing like work underwater, and then we just finished the deep dive. So commercial divers limit is 50 meters normally. if you want to go deeper, or if there's a need to go deeper, you have to do saturation diving, which is what I was describing about the guys who live at pressure. That's for over 50 meters. And that's pretty much only in the oil and gas industry where people need to go down to that depth. And that's a whole other world. They breathe special mixes of helium and oxygen. And they live at pressure. And my friend just sent me a video. The deepest ever saturation dive was at 540 meters. And it's crazy to me that that's even physically possible, because you think about humans, and we're, in some sense, the body is very fragile. You could go out on a okay.
Now we're back, I think.
Now we're back, I think.
No, we're back. But just the idea that the body's fragile, like you can't survive a fall of more than, 15, 20 meters off of an apartment. But the body can live at 50 times pressure. Like somehow the body's surviving. It's mind blowing. And they breathe hydrogen and oxygen in that experiment. So yeah, there's all kinds of interesting things, like specialized equipment, and these deep dives, they cost a lot of money, and that's probably why they get they get paid pretty well to do that. But that's saturation diving. That's apparently very difficult to get into. It's very hard to find jobs in saturation diving because they're well paid, and I don't think there's as many of them as there used to be, because oil and gas is not cool anymore, I guess. So and when people find those jobs, they don't want to give them up, because there's like I was saying before, you can do one saturation dive job and walk away with $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 for 2 or 3 weeks work, and then you don't work for another month, and then maybe you do another job. You do 3 or 4 jobs like that a year. It's extremely lucrative, and it's a pretty cool life balance, if you ask me. So yeah, that's sort of the pinnacle of the diving, is saturation diving. But if you don't do that, a lot of people work in like fish farms. They work in salvage operations. They work fixing boats or fixing pier or building. You can actually pour concrete underwater. People build underwater. So I don't know. I find it fascinating, and I'm having a lot of fun with these guys. So that's what it's all about for now.
Yeah. It seems amazing to me.
Sorry, you have a question here. Is that in SEER, the saturation exercise? I'm not familiar with SEER. I don't know if every dive school. Oh no, yeah, no, I didn't go through the Navy. It's possible that my instructor did, because he was with the Turkish Navy, but he did something in Florida with the U.S. Navy. I don't know the name of that program, but I can ask him if that's what it was. Yep. But that's cool that you did that in the Navy. Yeah. Thanks for chipping in, Bob.
What is it like to maybe not have the other dimension of the diving? There's diving, but then there's also trying to understand how to live in the pressurized chamber. It seems like a very condensed place. It seems like there's a lot of ideas between pressure locks. And what about relationships with people? It seems to me that you hear stories about people being in confinement together, especially if you have to live with someone for 2 or 3 weeks. I'm sure everyone's had a bad roommate for a little bit. I'm sure you have to have, what's the relationship building aspect like?
Well, I've never done it for more than a couple of hours, so I've never had to go through how that would be like. But I don't see it being a huge problem, because you can't really talk to each other too well, from what I understand. Communication is a serious issue, at those pressures because you have to breathe helium oxygen mix. And if you ever had the sensation of sucking in a helium balloon and your voice getting all like high pitch, it's very difficult to hear what's going on. And even for the divers when they're working and they have to communicate with the surface, I think they even have in some cases a special filter that will filter the voice down a few pitches to make it easier to understand what the divers are saying. So I don't imagine they're really talking a lot when they're off duty. I know that the toilet is kind of a special process from what I've read and what in videos I've seen, where there's a horror story. I don't know if it actually happened or if it's just legend, but apparently before you use the toilet, you've got to fill it with water. Otherwise, if you don't, your ass makes a lock to the seat when you flush it. And then the horror story is the guy didn't do that and got stuck to the seat and like lost part of his intestine and survived. So again, I don't know if that's true, but yeah, you have to be extremely disciplined, even in surface supplied diving, like what we're doing mostly at school. You gotta check the equipment all the time. Check the equipment. You follow the checklist. You got to make sure everything's working, because if that one thing fails, there's a few backups, but there's not backups for everything. So yeah, it requires a lot of like not quite military. You got to be a little bit militaristic with how you. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it's
it sounds like it's
an adventure. It sounds like a total adventure.
It sounds like a total adventure.
Yeah, was completely out of my depth. I don't, like I said, I've been scuba diving 3 times before this, and then I just like went to this real hardcore diving, and I'm with guys that I was saying before the show, like people I wouldn't necessarily meet, guys that are welders or people in construction or whatever, or all the people I'm with either grew up around diving families. Their families have diving companies. They've been free diving for a long time. So I'm probably the least experienced of them, but it's going okay. Like my swimming isn't that great. And the last teacher I just had was giving me shit about my terrible swimming the whole week, but I got through it, I did the 50-meter dives. It was all right. And, it's just a learning. I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to do it, was because I've been doing things that come more or less easily for most of my life, like I was saying earlier. And this isn't something that I would say I'm particularly predisposed to. So I think I have to work a little bit harder than some of the other guys that have done it for a while. So yeah, that's fun. It's hard work, but we have a lot of fun on the job. It's a good group of guys. I don't know what attracts people to this type of job, but yeah, it's good people.
Do you feel that going through this new stage of life is sort of like getting a new lease on life? Like on some level, you're being reborn. It sounds to me like choosing a new career path, using a different method to create your future is sort of liberating. It seems like it's kind of goes back to the idea of if you die before you die, you never die.
I like to have options. So do one thing and master it and put in the 10,000 hours. I've never really been able to do that. Maybe I have ADD or something, but once I get to the place, not that I've mastered it, I don't put those hours in, but when I get to the place where I'm like, okay, I think I know what's going on. I get it. I've done this for a while. Then I get the itch to do something else. So whether it's ADD or of learning that I have and curiosity, I like to do something, and I've always felt
I think we lost him here for a minute.
okay.
Back again. I think.
Maybe back, George. One of these, I don't know how. One of these days, I'm gonna have actual good internet for one of these podcasts. I feel like I'm always struggling with this, no matter what. Oh man! All right, we're back.
Nice.
Forgot what we
Nice.
were talking about. What were we talking about?
We were just talking
we were just
about the transition from.
I remember. So yeah, there's two schools of thought, right? There's the master at one thing, which is probably how you make the most money and how you become an expert and get status and all that. But I've always been attracted to the jack of all trades type characters that know a little bit about a lot of things. So for me, this is just another thing that I've learned and that I could potentially do to make money from. Fuck, man. Really sorry.
It's all good, man. I can
It's
edit
all
out.
good, man. I can edit out a bunch of stuff.
I've been asked internet, but cabin, you know.
You're in the middle of
There's only so
nowhere,
much
man.
you
I'm
can do.
surprised we're talking at all.
You're in the middle of nowhere, man. I'm surprised we're talking at all.
Yeah. But anyway, I like to know and be able to do different things, right? So it's also kind of a anti-fragile strategy. So if you can get income in various different ways, you're less susceptible to any one of them going away. You know what I mean? So right now I've got like 3-ish different job/income sources, and I want to add the diving as another one so that I can do projects. Because we know what I learned, George, is that most companies don't want to give me what I want, which is flexibility. So I've got to find another way to create that. And that's what I'm doing here. And I've tried, I tried to say, hey, let me just come in for projects. Let me work remotely most of the time. No, but they want you there for whatever reason or other. They want you there, like commuting day in, day out. You know, and that's cool. cool. Like, that's fine. But I'm trying to build something different. And should we call it, man? I don't know if this is gonna work if it keeps cutting out this
Yeah,
often.
we'll finish it off right here. We'll come back when we get better
We'll finish
internet.
it off right here. We'll come back when we get better internet.
Yeah, I'm sorry, dude. I tried.
Not at all, man. You crushed it. It's fascinating material. and
Usually
I'm
my
super
modem,
stoked to get to talk
usually
to you.
my
Fascinating material,
hotspot's
and
pretty
I'm super
good.
stoked to get to talk to you.
Usually my hotspot's pretty good, but it's like not working at all today.
It is what it is, my friend. It's
It
awesome
is
to
what
see
it
you
is,
and
my
talk to you.
friend.
I'm
It's
stoked
awesome
to learn
see
what
you
you're
and talk to
doing.
you. I'm stoked to learn what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, man, it was cool talking to you. It was, and yeah, I wish we had better internet, but I guess anybody that if you want to know about diving or whatever, just send me a message. This is what I'm doing now. Who knows if like I get work in this. It's apparently hard to find work, so I'm gonna have to look around. It's a lot of networking, I think.
Yeah, such is life,
A
though.
lot of
It's-
shitty work
though,
too.
but
I think there's a lot of work that just sucks. Like the people that work in the fish farms. It sounds awful to me. Because in Norway, they raise a lot of salmon in fish farms, and they'll have one net with like hundreds of thousands of salmon in it. And you've got to go around and fix the net, and there's just fish everywhere, and their fish shit is everywhere. And there's little kelp streamers and like all these different threads that you can get caught on with your gear or your rope or your umbilical or whatever. It just sounds terrible. And there's people that I think they do stuff with sewage plants. You know, they put on a special suit and they're jumping in like mucky water. I don't know. I hope I don't have to do any of that stuff. We'll see.
Time will tell, man.
time will tell.
But
man.
like it's really like very poor visibility most of the time. Like these 50-meter dives that we did, beyond about 20, you see nothing. It's just fucking black. And we have lights. We have like the only way I could see where I'm going is I asked for them to turn the light on. So for more than half the time down, it's with the light. And yeah, it's not like in the Caribbean with all these nice fish and stuff. It's like dark, murky water, you know. So it's not really a hobby. But I like the whole thing, man. I like being underwater. It's peaceful. I like all the technology and the people around. It's sort of like a camaraderie because we're all trying to not die, you know, and we got each other's backs, so it's cool.
Yeah, it sounds
Yeah,
like it.
it sounds like it.
Yeah, and there's not so much bullshit. I mean, I'm sure there's bullshit, but there's not as much bullshit like, you know, you in an office environment where you have to self-censor constantly and you only talk about specific topics, corporate approved behavior or whatever. It's a bit more of a manly environment, which you might say is toxic, but I just think it's more fun.
Yeah, anything's
Yeah,
got to be better
anything's got to be
than
better than
having the life
having the
squeezed out
life
of you in a
squeezed out of
corporate
you in a
office.
corporate office.
Yeah, and not to say that all those gigs are great. Like I've had some good gigs, but
Sure.
there are a lot of bad gigs where you just, I don't know, you're just in this little room all day, you know. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome, my friend.
Awesome,
Well,
my
it's
friend. Well, it's
a pleasure talking to you.
pleasure talking to you.
Yeah.
We'll,
We'll
I hope we can do another one when I have good internet in the future.
yeah, absolutely, man.
yeah,
I'd love to hear all
absolutely, man. I'd love
about
to hear all about the
conclusion of it.
conclusion of it.
All right, man.
All right.
Thanks
Thank you, my friend.
thanks
I'll hit
again,
you
man.
up.
I'll hit you up.
Yeah, have a good evening or day. It's 7 a.m. over there. 8 a.m.
Okay. Fantastic, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
Fantastic, my friend. I'll talk to you
Okay.
soon.
All right, brother.
Okay.
See you.
Okay. Aloha.